kick us off.
Okay. Welcome and good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight. This is the Phase 3 Community Workshop for the Benton Street Bikeway Study. My name is Nicole He, Associate Engineer and Project Manager from the City of Santa Clara for this Benton Street Bikeway Study. This meeting is being recorded and we will post the presentation slides and recording after this meeting. So if you have to leave during the meeting, don't worry, they will be posted on our project website. If you have any questions during the meeting, anytime you can put your comments or questions in the Q&A chat box, and we'll answer them after the presentation. So with that, take it away, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Nicole, and thanks for everybody for taking time out of your day to be with us tonight. As Nicole mentioned, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. There will be an opportunity for you to raise your hand and be recognized. We'll pull you so you can come off of mute, provide your question or your comment about the project. There are other ways that you can also engage with us. If, for instance, you need to leave early, you can leave us a voicemail message. The number here is on the screen, 408-381-4240. Again, our voicemail message is 408-381-4240. It's not a live number. There's nobody answering the phones, but we are checking those regularly and adding them to our log of comments. You can email us. bentonstudy@altago.com is our email address. There's also lots of information about the project on the city's website, santaclaraca.gov/bikeped projects. If you click on that link, it'll take you to many bike studies that are bike and pedestrian projects that are underway right now. Our agenda tonight, quick introductions. I'm going to provide some project overview and community feedback, what we've heard so far from the community. I'm going to walk you through the roadway design concepts for Benton Street. I'm going to share with you the trade-offs or the impacts that each concept would have for collisions, for traffic, and for parking. And then we'll talk about next steps. So you heard from Nicole at the top, Nicole He at the top of the presentation. Nicole is the project manager. Mike Liu is Assistant Public Works Director. We have with us tonight Steve Chan from the City of Santa Clara as well, Transportation Manager, and Carol Shariat is a Principal Transportation Planner. All of them are involved in this project. Alta Planning Design is the consulting firm that's helping support the city. I'm Jeff Knowles. I'm the principal here, and I'm joined by my colleague, George Foster, and my colleague, Francisco from our IT team to help us run this presentation. In terms of developing ideas or concepts for how to create continuous and comfortable bikeways on Benton Street, there's 4 different phases. The first phase was information gathering and conducting analysis on the existing conditions in the road. Phase 2, we developed and shared roadway concepts based off of what we heard from talking to community members and from that data analysis. We're here in phase 3, where we have conducted and are reviewing a technical analysis and have revised the concepts, and those are now ready for sharing out to the public to get additional ideas and feedback. And then the final phase, phase 4, is where we go to City Council for review and their consideration. And at that point, City Council will make a direction about how to move forward. And again, for this project, there are multiple different concepts, multiple different directions to go, including doing nothing, the no build option as well, and keeping things as they are. In terms of the schedule, this is our 3rd phase of community workshops. This will be the last time we have a dedicated community meeting for this, but we welcome you to come to future BPAC meetings. That's the city's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and for the City Council adoption meeting. Those will happen. There'll be a BPAC meeting later in the spring, and City Council will be, we're anticipating summer or maybe even early fall. So a little bit about the project. The 2.6 mile Benton Street corridor is primarily fronted by residential land uses, but includes Santa Clara High School in the middle. There are also many important community destinations along Benton Street or just off the corridor, including Carmichael Park, Central Park, Carly Park, and the San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail. I should mention real quick that this project is from Dunford Way to Lincoln Street. So that's the 2.6 mile corridor. There are some different characteristics along Benton Street for this corridor, from Dunford Way to Lawrence Expressway. It's a very short segment of the study corridor. It's 0.1 miles, and it's 60 feet wide from curb to curb. It's a 2-lane roadway, and the posted speed limit is 25 to 30 miles per hour. 1.7 miles, the middle section from Lawrence Expressway to Marianne Drive is 64 feet wide, and it has 4 to 5 lanes. Posted speed is 25 to 30 miles per hour. And then finally, from Marianne Drive to Lincoln Street, the roadway shrinks down to 38 feet wide. It's just shy of a mile, and it's 2-lane roadway with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. We've been doing a lot of community engagement and outreach. In our first phase, we had 2 community workshops just like tonight. We had an online survey. We went out into the community and held 2 pop-up events, and we met with the city's Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. In phase 2, we had 2 additional workshops, another online survey, 2 pop-up events where we went to meet with different high school communities. We went to Santa Clara High School and had a pop-up event. You can see a picture here, out talking with students, with faculty, staff, parents. We've met with the city's Youth Commission, the city's Senior Advisory Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the BPAC again. And in phase 3, where we are tonight, we're kicking off this phase. We'll have a workshop. We have an online survey that's now live, and a pop-up event that's tentatively scheduled later this spring, along with going to the BPAC one more time. Hopefully we saw some of you at the city's Christmas tree lighting event or at the Art and Wine Festival back in the fall and winter. This is where we had early draft concepts, and we were collecting feedback from the public about what these concepts could look like and the trade-offs. We had a very well received online survey where we collected over 258 responses, and 10% of those were affiliated with Santa Clara High School. We asked about the level of support for different concepts and feedback on why people supported or didn't support some of these concepts that we'd come up with. I want to report that respondents that are affiliated with Santa Clara High said having bike lanes will make it much easier to get to and from school and will provide overall improved road safety for all road users, and supported any bike lane installation. The results from that second online survey that concluded earlier last year, 46.5% support concept B for the 64-foot section. This is 2 lanes of traffic, a center turn lane, and parking protected bike lanes. Coming in second place for fully support was concept A, which is 2 lanes, a center turn lane, and buffered bike lanes with parking on both sides of the street. Concept C for this segment came in at 23% of the support. There are also concepts for the 38-foot segment, and that the highest support there you can see was concept E, which is to remove parking on both sides and installing buffered bike lanes at 39.9%. I'm going to go through these again to refresh people's memories. If you're coming to this project fresh and you don't know what these concepts are, I'm going to walk you through them in just a second. But for Santa Clara High School, 26 responses. You can see here 88.9% supported, fully supported concept C, which is removing parking on one side, evenly split between concepts A and B. And in the 38-foot section, split between E and F. E being removing parking on both sides to fit buffer bike lanes, and on F, removing parking on just one side and adding standard bike lanes. Those were the ones that were most supported by Santa Clara High School. So this survey is concluded and a new one is launched. So we encourage you to go online after this meeting and enter your preferences so we can collect that for City Council for their review. So what are these roadway concepts? For Benton Street, which is the 64-foot wide typical section, this is your current condition. This represents the no build option for City Council, and it matches what's out there today. And this is from Lawrence Expressway to San Tomas. It's got 4 traffic lanes and a parking on both sides. The vehicle lanes are 11 to 12 feet wide, and the curb to curb, as I mentioned, is 64 feet wide, including the gutter. The condition varies from Live Oak Drive to Sonoma Place near the Santa Clara High School, where there is a 2-way left turn lane parking only on the north side of the street and parking restricted along the south side of the street. You can see that here in this cross section. So this is just this section near Santa Clara High School. So the first concept that we came up with after looking at going out into the field, analyzing the data that we collected, and also hearing from the public, this is concept A. From Lawrence Expressway to Live Oak Drive and from Kiley Boulevard to Marianne Drive, this concept removes one travel lane in each direction, and adds a two-way center turn lane, left turn lane. You can see that here marked with yellow. Parking is maintained on both sides of the street, and an 8-foot wide buffered bicycle lane is added to each side of the street with a 5-foot bikeway and 3-foot painted buffer. So you can see here, this is the section from Live Oak Drive to Kiley alongside Santa Clara High School. Again, this concept removes one travel lane for concept A in each direction, keeps the two-way left turn lane that exists today. This concept provides additional protection for cyclists arriving at the high school or traveling through the area. The parking on the north side of the street is maintained. A 9-foot wide buffered bike lane is added to the north side of the street, and an 11-foot wide protected bikeway is added to the south side of the street. You can see that here, 7 feet wide with a 4 feet wide buffer space. And in that buffer space near the school side, there'd be some sort of physical barrier so that cars couldn't park in or encroach upon that bike facility. This is concept A. Concept B is very similar to concept A. This concept removes one travel lane in each direction. It adds that two-way center turn lane. We have an 8-foot wide parking protected bikeway that's added to each side of the street with 5 feet wide for the parking, 3-foot buffer. Parking is maintained on both sides of the street, but it's positioned outside of the bikeway to act as a vertical separation or a barrier that protects bicyclists from moving vehicles. And so you can see here the parking floats away from the curb. I also just want to point out also there's some daylighting or removing of a few feet of parking near the driveways, and that allows drivers to enter and exit their driveways and have more clear sight of oncoming traffic and people bicycling. This is also a location where people could store their garbage cans during garbage collection time, so it doesn't get in the way of people on the sidewalk or people in the bike lane. This is concept B near Santa Clara High School. Again, this concept provides additional protection for cyclists arriving at the high school or traveling through the area. The parking on the north side of the street is moved outside of a 9-foot wide bike buffered lane. An 11-foot wide protected bikeway is added to the south side of the street, very similar to concept A on the south side. And here you can see again on the north side, parking is flipped, parking floats out away from the curb, and the bicyclist is right next to the curb. So this is concept B. Concept C is maintains 2 travel lanes each direction. Concept C, we are removing parking on one side of the street in order to fit in buffered bicycle lanes. This study does not make a decision about which side of the street would lose parking under this concept. We've evaluated the impacts to parking on either side, and we'll be sharing that in just a minute. Travel lanes would also narrow from 10 to 11 feet, and you'd have a 7-foot wide buffered bike lane. Alongside Santa Clara High School, this concept keeps 4 travel lanes and a 2-way left turn lane. On the north side of the street, parking is removed and a 5-foot wide bike lane is added. So it's a very standard bicycle lane. No room for a buffer in this scenario. An 8-foot wide parking protected bikeway, just an 8-foot wide protected bikeway is added to the south side of the street. You can see here, 5 feet for the bikeway and 3 feet for the buffer. Moving further to the east on the 38-foot typical section. This is what is out there today. This represents your no build scenario for this section of Benton Street. This again is from Marianne to Lincoln Street. It's got 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction, and parking right now on both sides of the street. The vehicle lanes are 11 feet wide, and your curb to curb width, including the gutter, is 38 feet wide. Concept D, as in dog, The concept has two travel lanes that are shared with bicycles to create a bicycle boulevard. Striping, signage, wayfinding, and traffic calming features such as speed humps would be added in this concept to make this segment, this section, comfortable for bicyclists to mix with traffic. So this is concept D for the 38-foot section. Again, the feature here is that it maintains parking on both sides of the street. Concept E has two travel lanes, one each direction. Parking is restricted on both sides of the street. An 8-foot wide buffered bike lane would be added to each side in replacement of that on-street parking with 5-foot bikeway and a 3-foot painted buffer. This is concept E for the 38-foot section. Concept F, two travel lanes. Parking is maintained on one side of the street, and a minimum 5-foot wide bike lane is added to each side of the street. Vehicle travel lanes are also reduced to 10 feet wide. So just like in the 64-foot section, we're not determining which side of the street would remove parking, but in order to fit this one in for concept F, one side would need to remove parking. And finally, the 60-foot section. This is from Dunford Way to Lawrence Expressway. The existing condition is shown on the top of this cross section. It's got vehicle travel lanes that are 20 feet wide and also parking lanes that are 10 feet wide. It's 60 feet wide from curb to curb, including the gutter. What we've proposed, this is concept G, is at the bottom here, is keeping the travel lanes in terms of the number of travel lanes and just reducing them down. And so they'd go to 12-foot travel lanes, and that would free up room for an 8-foot wide buffered bicycle lane in this scenario. So this is concept G. For City Council's consideration for the public, we're asking you to select either keep it as it is or shrink down the lanes to accommodate this buffer bike lane for concept G. So those are the concepts, and we'd be happy to, when we get to the Q&A section, answer any further clarifications you have about how these would operate or any of the benefits. But now I want to talk about some of the trade-offs and impacts that each of these concepts would have for safety, measured by the number of collisions taking place on the corridor, traffic in terms of congestion and traffic flow, and then parking, what each of these concepts would mean for available on-street parking. So let's talk about collisions first. From 2017 to 2022, which is the last 5 years that we had available data, there were 122 vehicle-to-vehicle collisions and 6 collisions involving a bicycle on this stretch of Benton Street. These numbers serve as a baseline for the no-build or existing conditions concept. The analysis estimates how many collisions would have been avoided during the same time period if each of these concepts was built. In concept A, which is your 2 lanes, buffered bike lane concept with parking on both sides, it's anticipated that there would have been 39 fewer vehicle collisions and 2 fewer bicycle collisions. And most of that comes from the fact that when you take a travel lane down and one in each direction, it makes it easier and safer for people making turns at intersections, getting in and out of their driveways using that 2-way center turn lane, and also slows travel speeds down. The number would increase under concept B, which is also lane reduction, but has the parking protected bike lane. That would increase to 46 total collisions reduced, with more collision reduction coming from that bicycle lane, that protected bikeway, with 7 reduced collisions there. So this would have, concept B, we are estimating would have the greatest safety impact. Concept C maintains travel lanes 2 in each direction, so there's no benefit for collision reduction under our analysis, but there is some benefit in terms of bike collisions, so 2 fewer bike collisions under the concept C. For concepts in the section that are 38 feet wide, we're showing 2 fewer collisions under concept D, which is a bike boulevard concept, 1 fewer for concept E, and 1 fewer for concept F. And these again are based off of national studies and national literature review about how each of these concepts affects collisions. And so that's what we have for collision analysis. Again, for the 64-foot section, The greatest impact would be concept B. Slightly fewer collisions reduced under concept A. No impact to collisions under concept no build, and concept C would have 2. Under the 38-foot section, concept D would have 2, E and F just 1. And these are, again, collisions reduced, not total collisions that we anticipate during that time period. For traffic analysis, the city evaluated the time it would take to currently travel the entire length of the study in a car at multiple periods. We looked at it at weekday morning between 7 and 9 a.m. That's your AM peak period. We looked at it midday between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m., which corresponds with the release period for schools in the area. We looked at it evening between 4 and 6 p.m., which is your PM peak period, and also Saturday between 11:30 and 1:30 p.m., 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. We then modeled the estimated time it would take to travel the length of the study corridor from end to end under all the concepts. And concepts A and B are the ones that remove travel lanes that would actually have an impact to the travel time. So what did we show? During the busiest time of day, going westbound, which is the AM peak period from 7 to 9 a.m., it takes 15 minutes and 39 seconds to travel the entire corridor. That would increase by 53% to just shy of 24 minutes, so about an 8-minute increase during this high peak period going westbound. 36% increase during the afternoon period, and negligible impact midday or on Saturdays. During the eastbound direction, a 7% increase of just 43 seconds for the AM peak period, a 60% increase, so again, about 8 minutes added to the travel time to go from corridor end to corridor end during the afternoon rush hour from 4 to 6 p.m. Negligible impact at the midday and Saturday time points. We also evaluated the level of service at intersections along the corridor. We modeled this at 36 intersections, both along Benton Street, but also on surrounding streets to demonstrate any of the impact for any spillover effects that would have in the surrounding streets. Based on the level of delay, each intersection gets a letter grade, which is A through F. And this is based off of modeling traffic speeds, volumes, and the density of traffic. Intersections with LOS A through D currently meet the city's standards. Intersections with LOS E meet the city standards for El Camino Real, which is a state highway, and any of the county expressways. Otherwise, LOS E and F are considered substandard. So of the 36 intersections that we studied, there are 3 are currently substandard in the AM peak period, and 3 are substandard in the PM peak period on weekdays. Under concepts A and B that involve the reduction of 1 travel lane, the number of substandard intersections does not change. There still would be impacts at these, but they're minor and they don't change the scoring of those the letters, so they'd be the same in terms of meeting standards or not meeting standards. We've mapped those as well. This is current conditions and the concepts that don't involve any reduction of travel lanes. You can see that today on Benton Street, both in the AM period and the PM peak period, Kiley and Benton don't meet the city standards. And then if you look down on Homestead Road, there are a couple points where these intersections are not operating at city standards. Kiley and Homestead, Pomeroy and Homestead in the morning, and then Lawrence and Homestead in the afternoon. This is the analysis that we've run for concepts A and B. It's the same scenario here. Again, the impact would be for Kiley and Benton, no change, still not meeting standards. We then looked at parking analysis, looking at the changes to parking utilization. Under existing conditions, only 30% of available parking is utilized on the north side of Benton Street. Under current conditions, 23% of the available parking is used on the south side. Overall, that's 27% along the corridor. So think about it this way, 3 out of 10 available parking spaces are used at the highest demand time periods. And we We looked at this, we counted traffic during the morning, during the midday, and we also counted parking overnight, where there would be the highest demand for parking for residents. We also looked 500 feet on all the side streets that touch Benton Street, and of those, 29% of available parking is used. We then modeled what would happen if you took parking off on each side of the street. So for concepts C and F, and those are the concepts that remove parking on one side of the street, it would increase from 23% to 40%. If you took parking on the north side off, and that's what would be on the south side, and then you jump from 30% to 43% on the north side of the street. So there would be some impacts to parking, and we've also modeled this out in different scenarios. So for the 64-foot section, you can see here, this is current conditions. In green, these are the sections where there's available, typically over 50% of these sections of the corridor are available for parking. Yellow, 50 to 30% available. Orange, it gets a little bit tighter, 30 to 15% typically available. And in red, these are the areas that there's the highest demand, the least availability for parking. So you can see on Benton Street, there's a short section. Loyola Court to Las Palmas Drive on the north side has a high demand currently. Concepts C is the one that would remove parking on one side of the street. And in this scenario, we're showing what would happen if you took all of the parking on the north side of Benton Street off. You can see there would be impacts on the south side from around Live Oak Drive to Lawrence Expressway, but still should be available parking on the street or on side streets. It does get impacted more around Central Park. You can see here from around Sonoma Place to White Drive, there would be a higher impact, a higher demand for parking, less availability. If we took parking on the south side and moved it to the north side, you could see there would be high demand on the side streets around Moraga Street, across from the high school, and also in the same scenario, Loyola Court to Las Palmas Drive and Sonoma Place to Buchanan. Very limited parking in this scenario of those locations, but there should be some available parking on closest side streets as well. So just wanted to share the impacts of parking under this concept. For the 38-foot section of Benton Street from Marianne Drive to Lincoln Street, this is current conditions for on-street parking. You can see there is some demand for some of the side streets, and from Block Drive to Scott Boulevard, there is a little bit of demand there. If all the parking was taken off of the north side of the street, you can see there'd be impacts between Los Padres Boulevard and really Sunlight Drive, as well as some additional high demand areas on side streets around Scott Boulevard. If we flipped it, and if the city moved forward and took parking off the south side of Benton Street, moved to the north, you could see that there'd be high demand in some small blocks, but overall 50 to 30% or more available for those blocks. So next steps. Again, I want to share with you the schedule. We're here tonight with our Phase 3 community workshop. This will be our last community meeting, but we invite you again to stay involved with the project. We have a BPAC meeting, number 4, that we will have later this spring. And if you sign in to our, we've got an email address. If you send us an email, we can add you to our subscriber list. Maybe you heard about that through getting an email from George Foster earlier today, but we'll let you know when those BPAC meetings are held, along with the city council meeting if you'd like to join us for those. Last thing, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. We've got a project website. There's an email address that you can send us to, bentonstudy@all2go. And again, if you'd like to be subscribed to get updates about this study, send us an email and ask to be added to our subscriber list, bentonstudy@all2go.com. Our voicemail is live. You can call and leave us a voicemail message, 408-381-4240. We'd love for you to come to future public meetings for the BPAC or City Council. And really, we've got a survey that we'd love for you to take. I'm going to walk you through that survey now, and George is going to send it out in the chat window. At this point, the survey is live, and we'd love for you to take it. So I'm going to stop sharing it and share a different screen and show you what that looks like. If you're able to click that now. me? There we go. You click on that link, and again, we have a QR code, and that should be in the chat window as well. This is also linked on the project website. This takes you to a survey. It gives you the same information about the project overview. You can also click on the website to get more information. Shares the city's, sorry, just to let you know more about what it is, that it's going to close February 25th. So hopefully that you can take the survey between now and February 25th and let your residents, your neighbors, your family know about this. It asks you what your relation is to Benton Street. Do you live or work on the street or within a few blocks, or attend Santa Clara High School or work there, or travel on the corridor? How you heard about the project. We're constantly trying to improve the ways that we get the word out about projects. And then we ask you to go through a ranked choice voting. You can click here to get a high resolution version of all the Benton Street concepts, so you don't have to memorize each of them. This project website will be, I'm sorry, this presentation is being recorded, so you can go back to it and review my description. It gives you a little bit more information about each of these ones that we're asking you to rank. Again, there are 4 different options for the 64-foot section, 4 for the 38-foot section, and 2 for the 60-foot. And then we ask you to put these in your ranked choice order. You have to click at least your top choice. If you don't click any of your second, third, or fourth, we're going to assume that you don't support those. But for the ranked choice to work, we're asking you to click your first choice. Let's say your first choice is for the 64-foot section is a buffer bike lane. You'd click that there. And your second choice is the parking protected. Your third choice is no build, and fourth choice like that. So you can change these around. And then it drops you down and shows you again a thumbnail view of each of the concepts if you want to get refreshed in real time, what those look like. When you click next, there are some required questions. And then you could click next, it'll take you to the 38-foot section. There we go. And once again, for the 38-foot section of Benton Street, there are 4 options. Please put those in your ranked choice. And if you need to be refreshed on what those look like, there are thumbnails with descriptions of each of the concepts here. And then you click next and submit. So at this point, I'm going to bring it back to the presentation and look forward to getting into your comments and clarifying any questions that you have for me or for the city. Again, we've got Nicole here with us. We also have Steve Chan, the city's transportation manager, here with us tonight. So let me go ahead and share screen. And at this point, the Q&A window is open, and you should be able to indicate by raising your hand at the bottom if you would like to come off of mute and give us questions or comments. Right now, I don't see any hands up, but I do see some questions in the Q&A window. So maybe we can start there. And if folks want to come off of mute to provide their comments or ask questions, you can just do that by clicking on the raise hand function at the bottom of the Zoom window. All right. So let's go ahead and take some of these questions here. First question comes from Diane. I'd like to point out that with option B, which is the 64-foot wide section, the garbage can option will definitely not work in front of multifamily complexes like Pomeroy Green with lots of garbage cans. It may also not work well elsewhere when garbage cans are inadvertently knocked over by garbage trucks. Please don't select option B. Thanks for that comment, Diane. Let's see. Another comment. Diane Harrison, I'd like to point out that the option D, the BPAC, has been fighting for traffic calming for years with no success, so I don't anticipate any greater success if this option is selected. From Remy Wolf, a question, how was this collision analysis performed? I can answer that in a little more detail. What we did was we looked at crash modification factors, which is something that's put out by the Federal Highway Administration about how each different types of bike facilities or pedestrian infrastructure or vehicle infrastructure, how each of these countermeasures impacts safety. And they do this by doing before and after studies across the country. Multiple different studies are averaged together, and they come up with what they call modification factors. So that allows us to say, if a similar type of infrastructure is built on a corridor, how many fewer collisions would you expect during a similar time period? And so that's what we used. We used the collision modification factor for a road diet, which is taking away one travel lane in each direction, to see what those impacts would be for vehicle to vehicle collisions. And then there are similar collision modification factors for vehicle to bicycle collisions, which we applied to the number of bike collisions we saw in this corridor. And so that's how we came up with an estimate in terms of how many fewer collisions you might see if all things were equal. Remy Wolf asks, how was this collision? Oh, sorry, I answered that. Does the traffic analysis account for any potential change in mode share? And thanks, Remy, for raising your hand. It does account for some potential mode share, but it's going to be very small in terms of impacting the results. So a very negligible amount of mode share. We don't know if there will be a higher level of people taking transit or bicycling or walking after each of these concepts, but there was some of that taken into account. Let's see. We've got a few more in the Q&A window, but only Remy Wolf has got their hand up. So Remy, I'm going to go ahead and take you off mute. Please go forward with your question or your comment.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry not to flood the discussion here. I just wanted to say I don't own a car, so I use a bicycle pretty much exclusively for my commuting, and I do ride on the Benton Street corridor from time to time. So I'm really excited about this project and to see some of the changes that you guys have thought about implementing. Kind of on top of that question where I asked about changes in mode share, I think one thing I would have loved to have seen was a vehicle miles traveled analysis, because this is the type of thing like that would reduce vehicle miles traveled potentially because of mode share or just fewer people driving on the corridor in general. I think that could be another factor that would, change my support for one of the alternatives or another. So I just wanted to put that out there. But in general, I'm a fan of most of the alternatives that have been imposed. So thank you guys for conducting the study.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate your comments. Again, if anybody else would like to come off of mute to ask a question or share their feedback, you just need to hit the raise hand button at the bottom. That lets us know that you're in the queue. Otherwise, we'll keep going through the Q&A window. All right, next question comes from Kevin Heller Antrim. Is this assuming that everyone would still take this route? Would some people choose different routes? A really good question. The model that we did for traffic impacts does assume some diversion to different side streets, but still we think that there would be enough impact that there would be enough flow available on Benton Street. The majority would still take this route, but yes, we did model that. Nicole, I don't know if you wanted to share any more information about diversion or what we anticipated in terms of the assumptions for the model.
Yeah, just a quick add. As Jeff has shown the LOS map, we did model the LOS results of the parallel routes as well, so you can see what has changed. So, but at the end, the results did not show significant changes to the LOS results of those parallel routes as well, meaning Homestead and El Camino.
Great. Let's see. Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for the questions. See, just going through the list. All right. Kevin also asks, does this include church parking lot? I'm not sure what that's related to. Kevin, if you could clarify that question, we can get to that. Jack 1 wrote, what are the performance differences for driving lane widths? 10 versus 11 versus 12. A good question. In terms of travel speeds, what we do know is that narrower travel lanes result in lower travel speeds. So a 10-foot travel lane is going to reduce speeds on its own. So there could be some important safety impacts just by reducing the travel lanes down to 10 or 11 feet. We are maintaining 11 feet in certain situations because that's what we need to allow for VTA to operate its buses at 11 feet. In most scenarios, we are reducing the travel lanes. And that kind of detail could also happen if the city were to move forward in a detailed design phase. I don't think I mentioned this in terms of next steps. The city has some money available to move forward for construction, but there would still need to be a detailed engineering and design phase with public input to nail down some of these finer detailed questions about those travel lanes and what would happen at intersections and take this to the next step. This is still a very high level kind of feasibility analysis. All right, I see Scott Mace with a hand up. Scott, I'm going to go ahead and let you come off of mute. Please go forward with your question or your comment.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Mace. I currently live in Monterey County, but I grew up basically in this neighborhood in Sunnyvale, Santa Clara. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the California Association of Bicycling Organizations. I would like to raise concerns about the concept G of putting a buffered bike lane next to parking. That's the portion, I believe, down by Dunford. This essentially looks like a door zone bike lane. And although these are legal under California design standards, they are very dangerous. So if it came down to it, our organization would definitely support the no build concept in that section. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for that feedback. All right. Next up, I see John Blum. I am concerned about the garbage cans too, with the parking protected lanes. Not sure the open sections are long enough for those big trucks. Thanks for the comment. John Schmidt. Parking protected lanes are rare in the Bay Area, and I find them really dangerous. People can and do enter and exit cars and don't expect a bike. And those rare accidents are really severe. This means bikes must be prepared to stop quickly and thus go very slowly to be safe. As a cyclist, I would avoid any such sandwich between parked cars and sidewalk. Thanks. Valerie Birch says, has there been any studies done for a little extra bike and pedestrian safety near San Tomas as well? I've had a few near misses with high-speed cross traffic. Nicole or Steve, do you have any information for Valerie about looking at San Tomas?
Steve, do you want to take this one?
This is referring to Santa Mas Expressway, is that
Express,
right?
yes.
So that would come under the detailed design if we're gonna do bike facility there. We have to coordinate with the county roads and airports department to figure out what enhancement is permitted under their jurisdiction. Where, as Jeff said, we're not at that stage right now for this project. This is a high-level planning study. So as we move towards the final design, we'll definitely engage the county for detailed intersection improvement.
Great, thanks, Steve. I will mention that although we didn't model it and it wasn't the impetus for this study, the concepts that have the lane reduction going down to one lane in each direction would have positive safety benefits for people crossing the street, for pedestrians. Just the fact that the pedestrian doesn't have to navigate 2 lanes in each direction, they just have to navigate 1 in each direction. And there could be opportunities for a pedestrian refuge island in the center. So that all, as Steve mentioned, would need to be evaluated later on in a detailed design, but a good question. And Valerie, if we didn't answer that, please feel free to circle back with us. All right, I'm gonna take one more from the Q&A window and then we'll go over to the next person with their hand raised. So John Schmidt says, and this looks really well researched, planned, communicated, and run. Thanks. Thank you, John. Thanks for being here and appreciate the feedback. Omar, when does road construction start? Steve, do you want to answer kind of if the council decided to move forward, kind of what your thoughts are in terms of a timeline for when people could see any construction?
So, as you mentioned earlier, there are some funding available for construction. Depending on the actual improvements selected by City Council, there may be additional funding need for the project. But if it's a low-cost project that we have finalized in the concept, we could potentially go into construction in about 2 to 3 years, probably 3 years out, with design taking approximately a year to complete. So I think the early implementation, the soonest we could see potential improvement along the corridor is about 3 years.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I got John Blum with the hand up. Go ahead, John. You can come off of mute and go with your question or comment.
Hi, I had two comments. One was with respect to the parking protected lanes. I agree with Mr. Schmidt. I noticed that the modeling showed the fewest collisions with bicycles in that particular plan, but I'm a little skeptical because of the very large numbers of intersections and driveways along this section of Benton, and in that situation, anybody going in and out of those intersections and driveways has the potential to right hook or left cross the cyclist due to the reduced visibility of cyclists from the road caused by the intervening cars. The other comment I had was that a gentleman earlier, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, commented about the area around Dunford and the door zone bike lanes. If I remember right, the width of the parking lanes in that segment was proposed to be 10 feet. And based on experience on Mary Avenue and on Homestead Road, a 10-foot parking lane pretty much eliminates the door zone problem because there's enough room for the drivers to open their doors without intruding into the bike lane. Unfortunately, it's the 8-foot, which is the minimum standard parking lanes that create the problem, and those are unfortunately found in the other plants. And that's, but to the west of Lawrence Expressway, it looked okay. It's to the east that I'd be more concerned.
Thank you, John, for that comment and that clarification. I will add, just kind of throw in there, you had mentioned the collision analysis. That information comes from national literature about the improvements and sort of the safety benefits that come from parking protected, separated bikeways over standard or buffered bicycle lanes. There would be a lot of consideration need to have at intersections. I think folks have pointed out the right hook. This is when a vehicle is moving faster than a bicyclist and approaches an intersection to turn right and doesn't look to see the bicyclists coming up to go straight and collides into them at the intersection point. This can be exacerbated if there are parked cars in the way and make it harder for vehicle drivers to see bicyclists moving at speed. And so there need to be additional daylighting. There are designs that can do this, that enable this to work well. That would be something that happened at the detailed design phase. But on the whole, parking protected class 4 separated bikeways have been proven to be safer than standard bicycle lanes. Thanks for the comment and the question. Moving on, let's see. I see somebody anonymous attendee. What about changes to collisions on parallel routes under various alternatives? Was that modeled? Were there any significant changes there? We didn't have it within our abilities to, or within our scope to model collisions outside of the core scope or look at parallel routes. So it's hard for us to speak to any sort of estimation about collision reductions on those routes as well. So that would be something that maybe would need to be looked at a different phase, or if you had concerns about specific routes, maybe let us know, circle back around to us if there's some areas that you wanted the city to draw some attention to. All right, Kevin Heller-Entrim, regarding the church lot, so thank you for circling back with us. There was talk of parking on the north side of Benton, and I wondered if those calculations were including the church parking lot or not. No, our calculations for parking impact were only for the on-street public parking, not for any off-street parking lots. So if the church, and I believe that the church does allow some parking, certainly during school days, because we were out there making observations, I think does allow students to use that parking lot. That would be an addition or additional capacity that was not captured in our analysis. Edmund writes, in sections where car doors can open into a bike lane, can there be painted symbols on the bike path surface to remind drivers that bikes may come by at any time? There are limitations within the California MUTCD, which is a set of guidance for local jurisdictions and for Caltrans to use when designing bike facilities. And it really limits what the city can do in terms of adding additional reminders or signage, but that is something that maybe through education, the city could think about in terms of reminding drivers the dangers of opening their doors directly into bike lanes without looking and getting what people call dooring or getting hit by car doors. And so that is a concern with some of the buffered bike lane options or the bike lane options here. That option would be removed and eliminated under the parking protected concepts. Kevin Heller writes, I second that, getting doored is no fun. Thank you for your comment. Let's see. Right, keep them coming. Lots of questions here. So John, hand is up. Let's see, do you still have a question or comment?
No,
Okay, thanks.
sorry, that was a mistake.
That's okay, that's all right. All right, let's see. All right, we got Jordan Moldo. Regarding the collision modeling and the comment from John S. about parking protected lanes being dangerous, for the FHWA collision modeling, do they accurately model parking protected lanes as a separate concept from a real protected cycle track? The modeling is for Class 4, which is what Caltrans calls it, a separated bicycle way, and does not make a distinction under the data that we use between a cycle track and a parking protected lane. So, Jordan, maybe you want to ask or clarify that they are the same in terms of what the literature is saying. So there could be some differences. I think that may be what you're getting at with this question. There could be some additional differences based off of the flavor of the separated bikeway, what that looks like. And again, I'd say many cities have implemented these around the Bay Area. If you look at Cupertino, McClellan is a residential street that has separated bikeways on them with residential driveways. You could take a look at those examples there. And San Jose has also additional examples of what the separated bikeway could look like and how it operates. Martin Delson writes, here's another voice against parking protected bike lanes. Besides the danger of passengers exiting the car without looking, an additional danger is that bikes moving to the right of parked cars are not visible to oncoming traffic and so much more vulnerable to a left hook collision. Thank you for your comment. Valerie says, I appreciate the answer. Thank you for the additional information. You're welcome, and thank you for being here. Betsy Migas says, to the other attendees' San Tomas question, the expressways are county roads, so the city doesn't have the final word on the intersections. There is a county active transportation plan in the works, and advocates have been asking for better crossings. The website that Betsy includes is activesantaclaracounty.org. And George, if you can, maybe you put that in the chat window to let people know about that additional countywide planning activity that's going on right now. Thank you, Betsy. Jordan writes, and does FHWA modeling consider changes to the severity of collisions? If so, what does that modeling say about these alternatives? Or are collision numbers the only thing modeled? It's just, so Jordan, it's just the collision numbers. Some studies do look at varying severity, but that's all we had to go with. So we just have raw collision numbers. So again, there could be additional study done about the severity of some of these collisions here. Katie writes, I want there to be no parking to be removed. I lived on Karen Drive near Benton and Marianne Drive, and in my neighborhood, there's already almost no parking because of all the duplexes and apartments. We're set to lose a lot of parking from the new California no daylighting law already. My neighborhood has no public transit, and it's too dangerous to ride a bike on the San Tomas Expressway. We should build a protected bike lane on San Tomas Expressway instead. That way, riding a bike is a more viable option for more people. Riding a bike on San Tomas Expressway right now is like riding a bike on the highway. Katie, thanks for your comment. Jordan says, are you making recommendations regarding no right on red or leading pedestrian bicycle indicators in combination with any of these alternatives, especially for the parking protected alternatives? What Jordan is getting at is restrictions. So a no right on red would restrict vehicles from taking that right when they reach a red light, or leading pedestrian or bike indicators. And this would be allowing a pedestrian phase to proceed, like a walk sign, while the vehicle light is red, and let bicyclists or pedestrians establish themselves in the crosswalk ahead of getting a green light for vehicles. That's something that we've not looked at, but it's something that would be happening and looking at in the detailed design phase that would follow this if City Council wanted to proceed. I'll pause, Nicole or Steve, if you had any other follow-up on that one or any of these here.
No, I think you covered pretty well. I just want to add that a lot of the comments are related to the parking protected options. Again, that's we do have other options available for your consideration. So I encourage all of you to take the final survey. Let us know if you do not want the parking protected lanes. Let us know why, and leave a comment for us so we can, better report that to the council for their final consideration.
Thank you, Nicole. Valerie writes, just a note that the church does allow us to use the parking lot for student pickup and drop off. I pick up my student from the school there each day. Yeah, thanks, Valerie. Again, if you would like to come off of mute and ask a question or leave a comment, just hit the raise hand button. Otherwise, we'll keep working through the very active Q&A window. We had a meeting last week to talk about a very similar study happening from Monroe Street, and everybody wanted to talk. And tonight, folks are really availing themselves of the Q&A window. It's all good. Both are perfectly fine and acceptable. We're just happy that you're here. We have 23 members of the public that have joined us tonight. A very good, robust turnout. We're excited that you're here. And again, thanks for all the ideas, suggestions for the city, and for your feedback. Tom writes, regarding collision analysis for 38-foot section, concept D reduces bike collisions more than concept E and F do. Is it because the cars drive slower with concept E? Typically, that is the case, and I won't speak to that definitively, but that's my suggestion for why that has a slightly higher reduction of vehicle to bicycle collisions under concept D, which again is the bike boulevard that would involve some form of traffic calming with that. John Blum writes, the daylighting at intersections is almost always too short. At 30 miles per hour, a car goes 44 feet in 1 second. If the modeling of class 4 does not account for parking, I don't believe it. Thank you, John. And daylighting, for folks that aren't aware, it's a term used to remove parking at intersections to improve the visibility of vehicles making turns so they can be aware and look for people, pedestrians, people walking, or people bicycling, also navigating through intersections. And somebody also mentioned a new state law that's gone into effect that would increase the daylighting or the distance of adding red curb or restricting parking at intersections on the approach side. Omar says, will there be any plastic posts buffering the bike lane from parking? I think this will increase awareness of people exiting cars when parked. The answer is yes, Omar. Under the concepts with parking protected, there still needs to be a physical barrier in the buffer zone, and that can come in many different forms. It could be a curb stop, like you would see in parking lots. It could be some sort of posts or flexible bollards. It could be something planted. It could be many different ways that cities have done this to create a physical barrier. But yes, there would need to be something physical, because if there weren't parked cars there, the bike lane still needs some sort of physical separation, some sort of vertical barrier And so, yes, that would be there, and there'd be another way to increase the awareness of people who are exiting their cars when parked. I'll also mention that most of the time, vehicles are driven by single occupants, the driver, and the greatest concern is when the driver opens the door into the bicycle lane, not passengers opening their door into a buffer space. So that's one distinction just between the bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, and then this parking protected bike lane in terms of dooring. Jack 1 writes, impacts to existing travel times on Benton will push drivers to alternate routes. It seems necessary to look at those when figuring accident rate changes. I see this as an increase in traffic on Forbes since Prune Ridge was put on a diet. Thank you for your comment, Jack. Betsy writes, to the other attendees, San Tomas question. Oh, I've already answered that one, sorry. All right. Tom writes, the cars drive very fast along the 38-foot section east of San Tomas Expressway. Thank you for your study. Thank you, Tom. Edmund says, what is the city plan to maintain the painted stripes that mark the bike lanes? Many are worn out and not visible at night by vehicles, let alone on a bike with night lights. Steve or Nicole, do you want to take this question about maintenance of the painted stripes and visibility, especially at night?
I can start and Steve can add if he has more comments. But yes, city has maintenance program. We have a maintenance group to maintain the painted stripes for the bicycle lanes. Again, really depends on the staff capacity and then the funding that we have available for the maintenance program. But again, what we're discussing today is the bike study, a very high level planning document that about how we are going to conceptually design the buffer bike lane. But this is something definitely we will look into once we are getting into more detailed design phase and construction phase. So thank you for that comment.
I would also like to add that if new striping does get installed, there will likely be thermoplastic, much more long-lasting striping compared to painted striping that you may see throughout the city. As Nicole said, city street maintenance crew do maintain those as they fade out. But as part of new project, we also go in and install new striping, and typically we do thermoplastic, which lasts significantly longer.
Great, thanks, Steve. We've got another comment coming into the Q&A window, so I'll read that. I just flashed this back up. If folks would like to go ahead and take that survey, there's a QR code. You can click that there. Also in the chat window, we've got a link. There's also a link to the survey on the website. All right, we've got an anonymous comment. One of the challenges is road width between Marianne and Lincoln. This is the 38-foot section. Removing parking would not be feasible in this area as it would be tremendously unfair to residents. You can't change this infrastructure. We have to accept this is the case. So why not try to integrate some riding on the sidewalk, especially for the students. During commute times, it is really risky for bike riders. Can you consider a sidewalk option? I often hop on the sidewalk at times if the road is narrow. Be ideative. Thanks for the comment. Okay. Martin Delson writes, regarding the suggestion for a bicycle boulevard, again, this is an option for the 38-foot section. One, too few drivers understand sharrows, and many are frustrated by what they see as cyclists blocking their way. Two, bike boulevards are only practical when there are substantial measures to disallow long distance through vehicle traffic like Park Avenue and Bryant Street in Palo Alto. I don't think that is what you are planning for Benton, hence not a good solution here. Thanks, Martin. We've not gotten into the type of traffic calming, but probably not doing diverters like you mentioned for Bryant Street. So a good comment. Thank you for that, Martin. I don't see any additional comments in the Q&A window or any hands up, but the city staff and I are happy to stick around. If you've had your opportunity to speak or have your question answered, feel free to drop off, but please go ahead and take that survey. We really look for this group to share it out with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues at work, any civic organization that you're part of or group, your church or religious body. Please help us get the word out through social media, through knocking on your neighbor's door. George is sending that again to the link. We want to have a really robust understanding of this community's preferences for this so that City Council can weigh that when they make a decision. So I won't say good night, but if you would like to drop off, thank you again for being here. We'll stick around for a few more minutes just to make sure that everybody had the chance and opportunity to speak.
I want to jump
Alright.
in. Betsy, our current BPAC member, would like to announce that there's vacancy in our BPAC committee. If you're interested in joining the BPAC group with the city, please come to the city's website and look under the BPAC committee and submit an application. Thank you.
Yep. And again, for folks, the city's BPAC is the city's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. It's a body that volunteers their time. They meet multiple times in the year to review many opportunities just like this one and weigh in so that council can have an additional voice of people that care deeply about these issues. So thanks, Betsy, for raising that vacancy announcement. And thanks, Steve, for helping get the word out. All right, anonymous attendee, thank you. Thank you all. Again, you gave your time this evening to be here. I know there's a lot of competing interests for people's time. Hopefully this was helpful in giving you some additional data to make an informed decision about your options here. So thank you all. We'll stick around. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for being here.